one this morning by a controversial figure. So ignore the messenger. Depending where you are in the political spectrum, you're like, oh, that guy's awesome. Or you're like, that guy's absolutely insane. Everything out of his mouth is a lie. But I'll be very fascinated to see if, regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, if you disagree with any word he said. So if you do, I was hoping Greg would be here. So let me go ahead and start this and pay attention to the words, not necessarily the messenger. If just his face offends you, I'll just say it like that.
What was the sin, the core sin that Charlie Kirk committed against somebody, power, that got him killed in the end? And the answer is right in front of us, as certainly those of us who knew him. Charlie's life was defined by his Christian faith, not his spirituality, but his belief in Jesus, his life as a Christian. And everything in his life flowed from those beliefs. Everything he did, said, and believed came from the fact that he was, above all, a Christian. And that is, and was, and in fact has always been deeply provocative and offensive to the rest of the world. And why is that? It's worth thinking about it for just a second. Christianity doesn't seem like the kind of religion that would provoke people to anger and violence. In fact, it seems just the opposite. It's the world's most profoundly nonviolent religion, maybe the world's only truly nonviolent religion, a religion based on a man who Christians believe was also God, who, as he was being led away to be tortured to death on made-up charges, scolded one of his disciples for fighting back. This is a religion committed to love above all, and to living in peace and harmony, truly. It's a universalist religion that believes that every person has a shot at heaven. It's not exclusionary at all. And so you would think it would make sense that if you're a government or if you're in power, that you want a lot of Christians living in your country, because they're not going to cause massive problems. Not a lot of sincere Christians are fomenting insurrection at any given moment. Pretty much none, most of the time. They're tidy, they get married, they love their children, they pay their taxes, they're commanded to pay their taxes. So why wouldn't you want a nation full of Christians? Why wouldn't you encourage this religious belief, even if it wasn't yours? Why would you hate it? Well, there are a couple of reasons. There are a couple of things about Christianity, and these were evident throughout Charlie's public life, that are deeply provocative to the people in power. And the first is the insistence that Christianity comes with inherently, that you are not God. You are not God, and neither are your leaders. God is God, and all of us stand before him in the end to be judged, and all of us will be found lacking. Christians believe the only way to heaven is through Jesus. That's the only way. But all of us, whether we believe in Jesus or not, are fallen. We are sinners. We are less than we ought to be. We are not gods, and neither are the people who lead us. And this has a lot of implications. The first being, if you're not God, you don't get to do whatever you want. There are limits. There are rules that you didn't write that you have to abide by. That's not a judgment. That's a statement of fact. Some call it natural law. It's been the basis of every functioning society since the beginning of time. But the basis of our society is the Christian understanding of justice, which flows from that belief. You are not God. God is. He writes the most basic rules. You abide by them. Period. That's the basis of our law. That's the basis of Western law. And that is a threat, a challenge to people who would ignore the limits on their behavior, very much including our leaders and very much including the most powerful people in our society, whether they're elected or not. Nobody wants to be told you're not allowed to do something. And Christianity inherently tells people that. It doesn't judge them, it just states it clearly. No, you do not have the power to kill, except possibly in self-defense, but you can't just go killing people. And you can't go killing people because, and this is the second thing about Christianity that tends to set the teeth of the powerful on edge, Christianity insists that every human being is created by God. Every single one. And that means that every human being has a soul, a distinct, unique soul created by God. It is, once again, the only true universalist faith there is. And the New Testament is the story of this, an underread collection of books. That is not the story of the Old Testament. It's very much the story of the New Testament. In the New Testament, all people are God's chosen. Every single one. And the story itself makes that point. The founder of most Christian churches in the early Near East was a former Pharisee, a Jew who was in charge of killing Christians until he famously met Jesus on the road to Damascus. His name was Saul. He became Paul, and he is the most prolific author in the New Testament and the basis of a lot of Christian theology. And his life tells the story. People can change no matter what they look like, no matter what they previously believed, no matter where they're from, no matter what language they speak, because they are created by God. And every person, every single person, whether you like them or their relatives or the way they look or not, has that chance because all were created by God and all were loved by God. That is the basis of Christianity. That's the Christian story. And so a sincere Christian proceeds with that belief.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully something he said resonated with you. Anybody disagree with anything Tucker Carlson says there? It's a controversial figure, Tucker Carlson.
He said Christians were tidy. I don't know that.
Depends. If you go to some other parts of the world, we are quite tight. But there's some stuff that he said that's going to come up today with what we're looking at in Acts, especially when you say things that offend the powerful, or you say things, or you begin to do things that changes the culture and society that you live in. So remember some of that message and some of those things, specifically that question. We're going to deal with that too as we get in to Acts chapter 17 today. Y'all remember we've got the podcast, so get us up to like, what, 3 listeners, or we've been having 2 listeners routinely?
I haven't checked it.
Yeah, so if you can get us up to 3 listeners, we'll feel like we're actually doing something new. As we're into this.
He did like the Old Testament, God had chosen people, New Testament, all people are chosen.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff there that hopefully will resonate with you and help us think through stuff. As we're getting into this Grecian Chronicle, remember, we're dealing with real people, real places, real context, real plan as we go into this stuff. Last week, man, I hated to miss last week because it was like really one of my favorite, I think, most interesting chapters in Acts, because you see this melding of this Deuteronomy 32 worldview that we've talked about before. You see this reference to the Old Testament way that the Most High God is spoken of, and then when you get into the demonic possession, the Gadarenes, what is that demon named Legion? When he sees Jesus, how does he refer to him? He also says the phrase Most High God. So you're seeing this language that's used here. What do you remember most about last week in the discussion? The test of Derek's teaching ability. Don't let Derek down.
Just one of the things that struck me was how it lasted for so long before he did anything about it.
Who, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's surprising. I didn't know if it was to, I don't know why he did that. Was he trying to respect the culture? Was he truly irritated? Was he letting her tell truth until it was time to do the next step? Who knows? Or is he saying, if I wait on this, then maybe life will go easier for me for a little bit?
It would seem as though, in some sense, it would give more credibility to his message.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Why would you want to terminate that? I mean, there's some I don't know, I have all the answers to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I hope you paid attention to the Greek, because we miss this in our translations. Your Bibles are going to say spirit of divination or something like that. And so you're like, oh, they're just, it's like the lady who's got the house that has come in for your tarot card reading. It's just a trick or something. But you actually look at the Greek, and it says that pneuma, pythona, and the spirit of Python. If you use your Young's literal translation, the YLT, in your Bible app, it actually translates it spirit of Python. And Derek went into that a little bit too. Y'all remember that? What's the story there? I was going to show some pictures because I think it's sort of cool. There was one thing you missed. I was like, it's just so neat. Y'all remember what the spirit of Python alludes to?
Snake, is that right?
The snake. Where's the snake at?
The garden.
Huh?
The garden.
So yeah, so certainly that. But in there, history, it refers to the oracle at Delphi. Okay, so if you go to Delphi, you're gonna see this, and you had the view from the other side. We were actually there several years ago, Jack's little, but there is this pole right here that in 487 BC, after the Persian army was defeated, they took all the bronze from the Persian army and the Greek city-states, built this 20-something foot pole with snakes on it and snake heads, and it was a sacrifice, an offering to Apollo at Delphi, 20 feet tall. And so Constantine, about 1,000 years later, Constantine had the original moved to Constantinople, which is now Istanbul. So if you go to Istanbul, you can see the original one there. Okay, so that's like, what, over 2,000 years old now. And it's about 15 feet tall now because the Muslims at some point, because that represented a false deity, a false god, they broke the top part off of it. And you can see a bit of the top of one of the serpent's heads actually in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. Okay, so that's sort of a bit of the living history associated with this Numa Pythona and how they use this to offer. And they would actually put a big offering pot up at the top of this for Apollo, the Pythian Apollo. Okay, so real spirits, real things that are important in their culture that's taking place. Sometimes in our translations, this stuff gets confused.
Just the recognition of the expression, the Most High Elohim,
Yeah.
acknowledges the other side.
So, in this, I didn't see this in your slide. I don't know if y'all talked about this or not, because I want to spend a couple minutes on this before we jump into 17. Do these spirits still exist today? Remember Judy a couple weeks ago, she's like, well, I grew up thinking that Christ, when he defeated everything on the cross, all these things went away. And Judy, here we are, 25 years later, in this time frame of
I
that.
didn't say that. I said that he took spirits captive.
Okay.
So I just read the Ephesians verse.
Yeah.
And Ephesians 2:2 also says, refers to spirits which some of you would follow, but it's still in that first century setting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not, are there still influences? Does Satan still tempt us? If we say
Yeah.
Satan still tempts us, then I don't know that we would say, would get rid of all the demons either, but something happened.
Yeah, so
When
yeah, definitely.
he gave gifts to
definitely.
men,
Yeah.
and he took spirits captive, and we never addressed the, took spirits captive.
Okay, go back to Ephesians 6:20.
Uh-huh.
It says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, against authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
Wow, yeah. So here we have a physical indwelling of an evil spirit that did something at the Delphic Oracle. And it's Python, so we got a name, and we got the name of the spirit called Legion. Y'all been paying much attention to these shootings and stuff recently? Anybody see that? This is a Minnesota shooter. He kept a notebook, this is about 2 months ago. The guy who went to the Catholic school, and actually less than that, because the school when it started. I guess early September, late August. This is one of those trans shooters that went to the Catholic school in Minneapolis and shot through the stained glass window at the church school. And so he kept a notebook where he had used the Cyrillic alphabet basically as a way to mask what he was saying as a code. But he drew this image of himself looking into the mirror. Just think about that.
What is the image in the mirror?
It's a demon. It's got horns, and yeah, sorry, I guess you couldn't see it too. It's a demonic face with horns, and I mean, he's got arms doing the same motions a person in the mirror looks like. Huh. All right, we'll move on.
Well, you go back to what
your video was this morning. I mean, logically, you would say, why wouldn't you want a people that profess peace and that's what, but, you know, there is this dark side
Yeah.
that doesn't want
Exactly.
this. I mean, so, and then you have people who, Paul was blinded at one, I mean, prior to Damascus, and you knew he knew what Jesus had taught. But it took a dramatic encounter with Jesus for him to make that change.
Yep.
So the spiritual warfare is huge.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up knowing that. And so the appreciation of that is dawning more on me.
And we don't in the Western world. You go to Africa, you go to Latin America, where these things are much more real, and you see the experiences are very different than those of us who are raised in the scientific, rational way of thinking through stuff and explaining things away because spirits don't exist.
So,
All this stuff is random chance. And things.
so we're kind of looking at it like this, right?
Yeah.
So let's put it here. Have you ever felt that Satan has a hold of your heart more than God does? Like, you can almost feel the evil in your attitude and whatnot. Maybe I'm confessing more than I should. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
there's a couple times.
because I think sometimes we hold it out here.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, oh, I think Satan's got a hold of me right now.
Yeah.
I've said it, and it doesn't have to be even horrible stuff, but am I acting the way, am I showing God's fruit of the Spirit?
Yeah,
Or is Satan influencing me more?
Where you look in the mirror and you're like, I
Well,
like
that's
what I
it,
see in the
yeah.
mirror.
Like, you know, you look at this is our mirror,
Mhm.
and am I seeing myself here, or am I seeing, more of the fruit of that Satan wants in my life? So I think we can, I don't wanna just say, you know, point at others. I think we've done that too much in the church. We gotta look at ourselves too.
C.S. Lewis, Script of Better, I'm sure everybody has read
Yeah.
that. If you haven't read it, you need to read it, especially with things going on nowadays. But that's the whole gist, is that if I can get them to believe that we don't exist.
You know, and I thought along those same lines, and without Jesus, if there was a stand-up full-length mirror, and it would show you who you truly were in your heart, would you walk around the corner and stand in front and look at it? I think I'd just soon not see it.
You look a lot like that guy.
Yeah.
in that picture.
Yeah, I just, yeah. But that's the beauty of the gospel. We have the righteousness of Christ in spite of who we are, and he is in the midst of recreating us into his image.
Yeah.
So that's
Beautiful.
good news.
It's good.
And I think where the church has messed up in our presentation is we said, we're righteous and you're not, you need to change. And we're not admitting what we were before.
Wow. Is that true? And then taking that message, and as we're gonna see in 17, it's what it does in a society that's not prepared to change, as you have changed, as you have come out of idol worship and worshiping these evil spirits and all these things that are taking place back then, what is going on in your life with fornication and the culture that you live in, and you come out of that, what it does to your neighbor when you say, I've got a purpose, I'm changed, I'm different, and might be different for this too. Huge things to think about as we go through this and making Acts very much a practical study too. So appreciate y'all letting me sort of take a little dive down the Pneuma Pythona. I just think it's absolutely fascinating. All right, so Matt, we're up in this part of Greece right now. It is amazing how short a time Paul spends in these areas. Can you imagine us sending a missionary somewhere with the goal of only being there 2 to 3 months to set up a church and then leaving? I mean, our missionaries, we send Dave, how long do they stay wherever? Yeah, I mean, forever. I mean, 20 years or so, and we put them on the dole to do work for 20 years. That's good. That's a good thing. But what Paul said did was really, really different. It's like, go in as a commando, teach you a few things, and a couple weeks later, I'm leaving, and y'all are on your own. Fascinating way to do mission work. So let's read this, and then try to connect some dots with stuff. Let me start with y'all two, and then we'll do you, and then down over this. This is a short section.
After they passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and proving that the Christ had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to y'all is the Christ.
Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, including a large group of God-fearing Greeks, and not a small number of prominent women. But other Jews became jealous, so they took some wicked men from the marketplace and formed a mob and started a riot in the city. They attacked Jason's house, trying to find Paul and Silas and bring them out to the public assembly.
When they didn't find them, they dragged Jason and some of the siblings before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have stirred up trouble all around the world have now come here, and Jason has welcomed them. They are all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king named Jesus."
When the crowd and city officials heard these things, they were very disturbed. They took a security bond from Jason and the others and then let them go.
As soon as it was night, the siblings sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. When they arrived, they went into the synagogue of the Jews. Now the Jews there were more noble character than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with great eagerness and examining the scriptures daily to see whether these things were true.
As a result, many of them believed, including a number of the prominent Greek women, and not a small number of men. But when the Jews of Thessalonica had found out that Paul was also proclaiming the word of God in Berea, they came there too, inciting and disturbing the crowds.
Then the siblings immediately sent Paul out to go to the coast. But Silas and Timothy stayed there. Those who escorted Paul brought him as far as Athens, and then they left after receiving instructions for Silas and Timothy to come to him as soon as possible.
All right. What did you notice in that 15 verses?
History repeats itself over and over and over.
In which way?
Character,
Okay.
just the character of people.
Yeah.
And we see it today.
Really no different. And so the whole Charlie, or whole Tucker Carlson intro video at the beginning, put that in the first century context with what he was saying.
Mhm.
That's what I was hoping people would begin this connection.
Just that the recurring theme that Jesus, the Old Testament was about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Just, according to the scriptures, he rose according to the scriptures, that it was all laid out within the city. And for us,
I like how they say at one point that these are the people that have already started to change the world, change people's thoughts. And so it's like, okay, so it's already, like they already know about that. Like the message has already gotten around to the point that they know the effect that this has had in other cities.
I'm always amazed that the Jews go to, become jealous, and they don't try to fight that feeling. I guess they've never had any teaching about that, but their go-to is to form a mob and try and kill the people who are making them jealous, rather than try to do better themselves, rather than to learn more about them. They're jealous, that's their go-to, kill.
Parallels to what we've seen the past couple weeks.
Well, and you know, the jealousy wasn't just restricted to your community.
Yeah.
You know, when they left and went to Berea, and that community was very favorable and thankful. And yet, that Thessalonican guys got to come.
You're gonna have to change the way you think.
Yeah.
the concept that we are God's chosen people was just ingrained into special to God is with lost order. We have other people coming in, into our midst is one of it. And then the other thing was power and influence and money, and, you know, that was being threatened as well. You know, status in this, in the community was being, all that was being threatened.
Going back to the "you're not God, God is God." He's laid all this out, what he's doing. It's all in the Old Testament. I'm Paul, going to have to sit down and show you this. We're going to talk about these things. We're going to do it in Thessalonica. This is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Nothing's actually changed. It's just his plan further on. All right, let's try to make some sense of the cultural, societal stuff that's taking place too. This was probably about a 3-day journey that he takes from Philippi. Remember, they've had a really tough beating. There's something called the Ignatian Way that they would have traveled down. Usually somebody in pretty good health during this time frame could walk about 25 to 30 miles a day. So maybe they went a little slower and sort of divided this up, but they could if they were trucking it, get to each one of these cities, Amphipolis, Apollonia, and Thessalonica, in one day's journey each end on this big Ignatian Way. Easily to travel, easy for people to walk on and hoof it quickly if they're trying to make it there. They're going to this really large city of Thessalonica. And when they get there, they're going to encounter about 65 to 100,000 people living in this city. It's mainly a lot of Greeks, but there's also Italians who moved there from the Roman area. You've got Thracians that are in the city as well. So you've got this mixing of these cultures, okay, from true Romans, people who are Greeks, to people who have more Eastern influence, the Thracians that are in this area. One of the things about Thessalonica, too, this is considered a free city, okay? So they've got their own form of government, which we're going to encounter with this politarchs. They're minting their own coins. This is also a city in the Roman world that's sort of the center for communication and trade, okay? So you can think of, like, I don't know, your Nashville, your Atlanta, something like that, a big city where a lot of stuff is taking place, a lot of people are coming and going, and they want to maintain their influence with the people that hold power, which is those folks in Rome. And they want to keep the emperor and all that he controls happy in this area. As is common in these Greco-Roman cities, there's a lot of promiscuity and sexual laxity in the way women are typically treated. And you can go and read some quotes from some of the people at this time, and you would have a mistress, and you would have somebody at an inn if you were traveling that you would spend time with, and then you'd have another girlfriend on the side somewhere, and then you'd actually have your real wife that would bear you legitimate children, and she would keep the household down while the men were out sort of doing their thing. So, and that was pretty common. And then you would go to the temple to do sort of the same thing if you wanted to. So this is all over the place at the time. The interesting thing about Thessalonica is some of their deities. Okay, so the gods, the little g gods that they're worshiping are really some of the old ones that have been around for a while. Isis, Chabrias, those are some of the Egyptian deities. They're worshiping some of these ancient little g gods, as well as sort of these traditional Greek deities too. And so these temples would have been all over the place as well. You sort of go in and do your thing for whatever little g god you're wanting to worship. And if we sort of take that Deuteronomy 32 worldview, that these little g gods have some power in these areas, okay, then Thessalonica certainly had a lot of little g gods trying to exert their influence and reign over these areas. And now the Most High God is coming in with the message of Paul, and he's taking back this area. Part of what they're doing here is they're wanting to maintain their favored city status. So you're going to see a temple to Augustus in this area. You're going to see a statue of Augustus in this area. We'll talk, I think that's on the next slide as we go in, as Paul is leading his group in. There had also been earthquakes in this area, probably the same year to maybe the year before Paul and his team would have come into this area, and those earthquakes were followed with famines. And so culturally, what they're dealing with is, well, this all happened because we upset the gods. All right, we got to sort of make sure everybody in the city's doing the right things, and the God's shining us with favor. There would have been this period of maybe paying a little bit more importance to their traditional religious things and sacrifices that they're doing and things that they typically do to try to have a good harvest and keep the gods happy. Because of this too, there's a high unemployment rate in the city now. That's the mob of people that are hanging out in the agora. And there's this reliance on the government to feed you. So they get there. There would have been this triumphal gate at the city's entrance when we were in Jerash. Folks that went on the trip to the Holy Lands a couple years ago now. Remember that triple gate, the Herodian triple gate going into Jerash? Would have been something similar to that they would have gone through. And there would have been this statue of Augustus over to the side. Okay, remember Augustus was considered a deity off in the distance. This would have been cool. Mount Olympus can be seen off in the distance from Thessalonica. If you remember your Percy Jackson and what's the children's book and stuff like that, huh? Yeah. Or any of your mythology of this time, Mount Olympus was that sort of place where these gods had their headquarters. So this would have been viewed from this area as well. And then from the scriptures too, we know that at least 3 weeks, Paul is there. Okay, so at least we've got a timestamp of he's there for at least 3 weeks. And every time this observant Jew, Paul, is going where he's supposed to go and gone where he's gone for week after week after week, every week of his life, to the synagogue to do what he's supposed to do to worship. And while he's there, he's opening the scriptures and saying, hey, guess what changed about 20 years ago? This Messiah that was promised to us has come, and here's the proof, because he did exactly what Isaiah said he's going to do, or this prophet or that prophet, or what Moses said was going to happen, and we're seeing it here take place now. Remember, when he's doing this, he's using the Septuagint. Okay, that was their Bible at the time. This is Greek-speaking people. Okay, so the Hebrew scriptures translated into the Greek is a Septuagint. He would have been using this to preach, and Johnny touched on this earlier. Johnny, where was Paul going to do this? And what do you think? This is my test. Is I think I'm teaching 4 more weeks before we move. 3 or 4 more weeks. This is my test to see if y'all remember anything for the past 8 years I've been teaching.
Well, I would prefer you answer. That's the test. I'd ask someone else. But why did Paul have to go to do? Where did he go?
Yeah, so where's he going in the scriptures to do this? And why exactly?
In the scriptures.
Yeah. And you can mention all kinds of stuff, but why exactly does he have to explain and prove that the Christ had to suffer from the dead? This is a key thing that we've had several classes over the years. We talked about this. And understanding the view of the typical Jewish believer at this time is they read the scriptures and they were looking for the Messiah to come. And it's very clear. I mean, everybody sort of gets well, let me let y'all talk. I'm not going to spoil the answer.
Isaiah's one.
Okay, so certainly would have gone to the suffering servant passages in Isaiah. But that's contrasted with what other views of the Messiah that's there.
Conquering David and
Yeah.
Ah! I got to come back and give you a high five. Thank you for. Thank you. Yeah. So yes. So the Messiah, Ben Yosef. Okay. So the 2 views of Judaism at the time was that there were going to be 2 Messiahs. That's actually still in their literature today. That we're looking for the son of Joseph, and it's that Messiah who's going to come and suffer and rise from the dead. Remember, Joseph went into the ground for 3 days. Joseph came up. He suffered. He went to the Gentiles. He was king among the Gentiles, and then he saved his people. And they went the second time when they saw Joseph, they were, oh, that's our brother. So there's the Messiah, Ben Yosef, and the Messiah, son of David.
He would have gone to Deuteronomy 18, where he said, the Lord your God will raise up a prophet for you, a prophet like among you. listen to him, and I've got it.
Yeah. So Paul's going to all of this, but he's having to prove to them, hey, it's not two different Messiahs, it's one Messiah, okay? And he's come and he's suffered, and he's risen from the dead, and he's gonna come back, and he's gonna be the king that we're all looking for. Okay? That's part of what this is alluding to here, to get Old Testament stuff. All right, so this is crazy to them. Some of y'all are like, I've never heard this Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben David before, but they did. Okay, and they're like, how can it be like one person? I mean, we've been thinking it's been two Messiahs, and there's this, what do you mean he's coming again? So Paul's explaining this. The Greeks are listening, and they're like, well, this is really sort of interesting. Some of the Jews think this is interesting too, and they see what's happening in the scriptures, and so they're coming together. You got Greek, you got Gentile coming together to do this. Jason is probably a Hellenistic Jew. Jason, the name translates to Joshua in Aramaic. Okay, so that's probably just a clue that this is a wealthy Hellenistic Jew who's accepted the gospel. His home now becomes a place where people are gathering. They got a small group church going on. Yeah, Mike?
I can see how he could make the case for the suffering servant of Messiah. How did he make the case for the conquering Messiah?
That's all replete in our Old Testament stuff. And we've done classes on that before, but Habakkuk chapter 3 would be one place. We did that several years ago. Ton of stuff in Isaiah. I can share those slides with you later if you want to look at that again. So he's got this house that he's using. He's got the First House Church, small group that's gathering together, and they're teaching. Okay, they're opening the scriptures, spending time in it, teaching what obedience to the Lord is supposed to be like, getting people to realize that this idol worship and things that are taking place in these temples, that now your body is a temple. Okay, you've got to change how you relate to your culture and the things that you're doing. And so for the people observing this in these communities, this is weird. All of a sudden, these people who are coming out of these temples, okay, they're not hanging out with their friends anymore. They're not doing the stuff that everybody else in the neighborhood is doing. They're leaving these idols. I mean, they've got them in their house. That's what typically is taking place in this situation. Their neighbors may wake up one day and there's a pile of idols outside in the street where somebody's cleaned their house out of these things. They're not seeing them anymore visiting the temple prostitutes. I mean, that's like your buddy going to take you golf. And, hey, Dave, let's go play golf tomorrow. And back then it's like, hey, Dave, let's go see the temple prostitute tomorrow. And Dave's like, no, I'm good. I'm not doing that anymore. And your friend is like, what do you mean you're not playing golf anymore? We play golf every Saturday, Dave. That's what we always do. So there's changing that's taking place because people are realizing they belong to somebody differently. All this stuff was integrated into their life. Okay? If you wanted to have a good harvest, you would go visit the temple and make a sacrifice. You would do all these things to these gods. So all of a sudden, there's a group of people that's very, very different. Standing out from the society, standing out from the culture. Did you notice that phrase, Christ is King? That they're going around saying that Christ is King? It's right there in Acts. That becomes problematic. For the politarchs, the people in power, remember what Tucker Carlson was saying? People in power are getting threatened by this message. Because all of a sudden, there's another king. You're not God's. God is God. That's what these people are saying with what's happening in their life and how their lives are changing. And their neighbors are now like, well, they've become weird. Dave's not going to play golf with me anymore. He's saying that this guy named Jesus is king? No. The king's in Rome. That's not right. I got a problem with what Dave's doing. He's threatening our local government. He's threatening our city. I'm going to tell somebody about this. So that's what begins to take place. They're rejecting all of this. Paul's message, because people are hearing Paul, he's challenging the norm. He's saying that this Jesus guy is going to come back. This person who is king is going to come back, and he's going to set up his kingdom. So very quickly, the person who's delivering this message becomes the enemy, and they want to kill him. They want to off him. They want to get rid of him.
You know, the question comes, how difficult was it for someone to become a Christian in that culture and relate job-wise and, you know, and the ability to buy and sell and prosper? And it would have been you'd have to stop and think, am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Am I going to be committed?
Yeah, and you remember how quickly this begins to take place too. Paul's there. We got at least 3 Sabbaths. He's in the synagogue. He's probably there about 3 to 4 months. This is a very quick change in a group of people that's very observable to their community that they're living in. And that message gets out. So going back to something in that video, because here we see a message of Christ is King. It's very provocative. We see people's lives changing. People that used to play golf on Saturday are no longer playing golf. They're doing things very different that alienates them from their neighbors. Their idols are cast out. Somebody walks up, there's idols out on the floor. Oh, it's that house. Oh, it's those people who've been hanging out with that guy named Paul. All of a sudden, it's become an offense to everybody. Is your faith offensive? Is it provocative?
She said they would hate him if they don't hate you. So at some point, we have to ask ourselves, are we pushing the envelope in the way that he did?
Yeah. And that's, I think, the message of chapter 17, this first part, first 15 verses, is what's getting ready to happen. Are we causing this to happen in our community? Should we? I mean, the stuff we've seen past couple of weeks, assassination, I mean, should you be doing something that causes people to want to off you? Maybe we could say it a little bit, and John, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
I mean, your question is trying to get us to be introspective.
Yeah.
But, you know, within our community of Jackson, Tennessee, even though technically I think Christians are probably in the minority, there's a lot of us.
Yeah.
And it's part of the culture here.
It is very different.
And it is very different when you go to a part of America or a part of the world that is not like that.
Yep.
And it's, you know, when we live in our little bubble, it's hard to put ourselves outside. And I mean, you've experienced much more than probably any of the rest of us, parts of the world where Christianity is, they might not have even known a Christian in their entire lives. You might be the first one that they meet. And so it's hard for living inside the bubble. It's hard to put ourselves, you know, out there to even understand the implications of the question. Because what we believe is not provocative in Jackson, Tennessee, for the most part. But if you take it to another part of the world, it certainly is.
But I think there's danger sometimes in thinking that the culture we live in has it all right. Is all right.
By no means.
Yeah. And maybe that's where, if we're going to try to make this applicable to sort of where we live and the time and society we live in, just because our Jackson, Tennessee says it's okay to do this and okay to believe this, this is straight from the Bible, should we take that as gospel truth? Or should we be introspective regardless of time and place? And how can we be provocative? I don't know, something to think about. Let me try to get through some of the rest of the stuff. So Paul's got this workshop there. Remember, one of the things that's important, and we're going to see this as we delve into Thessalonians, Paul's working. He's there just a couple months, and immediately like, I don't want to be a burden on you. I'm going to set up a little workshop. He may have done this in Jason's house. He may have just had a space in Agora. where he's got his tent making stuff, and his buddies are working hard together to mend tents and to pay their own experience. And in doing so, he's setting an example for them. And this is going to come up when we review Thessalonians of, hey, if you're not willing to work, when I was living amongst you, I set you this example of don't just be loafing around. Don't take the grain subsidy that the government's giving you, okay? Don't rely on the government to take care of you, because you're going to cause problems with the government if you're literally living like you're supposed to and Christ is king. You got to work for yourself. So I'm setting the example as the dad, showing you how to live and how to do this work, okay? Philippi hears about what Paul's doing too and his buddies, and they're like, well, we're going to send you a little help as well. So in this Thessalonian church, you got a lot of these ex-pagans, okay? These people who have come out of the temples, who are used to living, playing golf on Saturday, who are used to eating the food sacrificed to idols and all that stuff. They're having to change their lives significantly. You got some Jews from the lower class who's part of this, and Paul's got to lay this foundation for them of, this is the life you've got to live now as you're coming out of this. Some of the things we're going to see as we dive into Thessalonians the next 2 weeks, this subversive gospel of the kingdom that he tells them about that becomes problematic to the powers that be. Part of that is that the king is returning, okay? You got the Mashiach ben Yosef, okay, the suffering servant of Isaiah, but hey, he's coming back. And the Old Testament scriptures talk about that too, that the king is going to return. And we'll see how that plays out in Thessalonians too. And all of this message that Paul's saying makes him an enemy to the powers that be. So the leaders, they go out, they find the mob. Remember, people aren't used to working in this culture. They're probably hungry because there's a famine that's been taking place. There's an earthquake that's been taking place. And so they rile them up. They go into Jason's home looking for Paul and Silas and everybody. And they drag Jason amongst the powers that be. And when they're doing this, they're pointing to a couple things. They're saying, this guy is turning the world upside down, okay? Our society is becoming completely different because he's telling people not to do certain things. He's telling people that God is God, and there's only one way to him, and that's through Jesus, and that's going to cause you to change your life. He's turned our world upside down, and the king that lives in Rome, he's saying that guy doesn't matter. He's saying there's only one king that matters, and that's Jesus. That becomes a problem. Okay, so Paul and Silas head out in the middle of the night. Timothy stays behind. Okay, Timothy's a younger guy. Maybe he's not as recognizable. He's learning. He's in this position of learning. And so Paul heads off. But in this church, there are some people, some names you're going to recognize. Okay, one, you've got Jason and Aristarchus. Hopefully I said that right. And you've got Secundus and Demas. All of these people are going to come back later and are going to be mentioned in some of Paul's epistles about things that they're doing good and things that they're doing bad. But now we've got this Christian community founded here in Thessalonica. He heads off to Berea, not too terribly far away, probably about a 2-day journey. This is this resort-like town, real nice place to visit. It's typically an older community, more wealthy community here, high literacy rate in this area. And immediately he does what Paul typically does, heads to the synagogue. And when he gets to the synagogue, and he opens the Septuagint and begins to talk to them about the Messiah, they get it. Okay? He doesn't get the hostility that he got in these other areas. These people are willing to listen. They're like, this makes sense. I see what Isaiah was talking about. I see what Moses was talking about. You're helping me connect the dots and put the pieces of the puzzle together. But of course, very quickly, jealousy, we mentioned that, human nature, the powers that be are threatened. And so people from Thessalonica come down, create problems for Paul, and Paul's got to get away. And so this is about a 320-mile journey that he would have taken with the Bereans coming with him to keep him safe and protect him. They could have done it by small boat like this, and typically that would happen. You'd skirt along the seashore. You'd be able to travel pretty quickly. You'd pull into an area at night if you needed to for coverage and to sleep and stuff like that as you're making this journey. Silas and Timothy now stay in Berea, and they're going to continue to work with the body of believers there and help them understand what's going on. And then Paul goes on to Athens completely by himself. And so in 3 weeks, we'll pick up what Paul does in Athens. Next 2 weeks, we're going to take our little detour and time sort of these letters, because one of the things we want to do is this mirror reading process of the letters that Paul has written. Okay, you see the culture he's going into, you see what he's dealing with these places and these events that are taking place, and then most of the time, very shortly after he leaves, he has to write a follow-up letter to him to sort of answer some questions and some problems that have been brought to him. And so the mirror reading is, what did Paul teach him when he was there? And now how is Paul dealing with some of the problems that have come up after he's left? So we'll take this quick detour into 1 Thessalonians next week. Look at what Paul's message would have been. It's honestly surprising to me. When you sort of line this up and you think, these are the most important things he dealt with? Wow, we don't even deal with this stuff nowadays in church. But Paul felt it was pretty stinking important. All right, that's it. Wow, almost right on time. Anybody have any final questions, comments, anything like that before we start? All right, thanks for everybody's feedback today. Have a good rest of the week.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Thanks for being the one person today.
We were driving down there today.
There's nothing wrong with that. You were on that last night.
Yeah. How are you?
Yeah.
How does the symphony?
They have picnic tables outside. They have inside seating too, but,
That should be fun.
Were people still there when you?
There actually was. In fact, the guy who's the chief medical officer was a pretty good care doctor who trained me. And so I will be under, working with him closely. He's real close to
it
retirement.
opens, it closes at 10.
That might be.
Opens at 10, closes at 10. Yeah, so, maybe
Right,
there,
and there's a couple things that they mentioned.
kind of central, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think, or if somebody else has another suggestion, that Oscar, we can not every connect and.
It's just like taco chicken,
Well, so we were at Wednesday night, Wednesday late afternoon, early evening, and all day Thursday, most of the day Friday, and Friday night. Found our 2 neighborhood people, but there was nothing that we were like, we got to have this. And then we thought we had our house sold here, and then the people who had said they wanted to buy it, and then actually came time to do it, they're like, well, it's a house for us right now, they're like, yeah, it's for sale. So now we gotta try to sell our house here, which also, I'm conservative financially, and it doesn't like, anything more than this. So we may want to move into an apartment or buy a townhome, some small house. So,
Well, like sticker shock over there too, isn't it? Is it a lot different?
So,
Signal Mountain.
yeah, so we want to be in a mountain community, and, so Signal Mountain is.
Lookout Mountain's real high. Because there's lake homes and they're crazy high.
But if we like move to a more flatter area in Chattanooga, it's not a lake, it's similar.
Probably not as good prices as the other close, like just.
But you pay, like, you get that, like one of, the two places we would be are above mountain.
They're gonna move there and do it.
I know. So that's what, there were two houses